Week 17 of the fantasy football season. With championship week here, he is the top 12 kickers. I'm ranking this week number 1, Brandon Aubrey of the Dallas Cowboys. So Brandon Aubrey, what a season it's been for him. 14 plus 50-yarders this year. And this week a matchup at Philadelphia where Dallas knows they got to put points on the board, especially if Jalen Hurts plays in this game. So Aubrey's got a big boot. He can kick it from anywhere, even in the cold weather and bad conditions. Let's say if it is at Philadelphia, I believe he could go out there and have another big performance. Number 2, Kaim Fairbairn of the Houston Texans. So Fairbairn, he's been a solid kicker all season long. Indoor game back home versus Baltimore. And another team that's going to trot their kicker out there 55 yards, where they got to keep up on the scoreboard with the Baltimore Ravens. So Fairbairn, he's been active all season long, putting up a lot of points. And this week, once again, versus Baltimore, where this Texan team does throw out a lot in the red zone, I think he has a good game. Number 3, Chris Boswell of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So this week, another team where they got to put points on the board. I know Kansas City's offense is definitely down from last season, but they still find ways to win these ball games, obviously being 14-1 on the season. So I think Boswell, another guy, 50-plus yards, he's automatic for the most part. High percentage from kicking that football from that distance. And this week versus Kansas City, I think he puts points on the board. 7 or more fantasy points he pretty much does weekly, so his floor is even better than most kickers. Ceiling is Chris Boswell. Number 4, Harrison Butker, staying in the same game with the Kansas City Chiefs. So this week a matchup at Pittsburgh where it's going to be a grinded out performance, I believe, between these two teams on Christmas Day. And Harrison Butker now, he's been back over the last couple weeks. I know he had an early struggle a few weeks ago in that ball game at Cleveland, but he bounced back last week with a good performance. And this week at Pittsburgh, where their defense is bend but don't break at times, he's going to have to settle for a few field goals, I believe, and has another good ball game. Number 5, Jake Bates of the Detroit Lions. So Bates, he's in a high-powered offense, arguably the best offense in all pro football. And this week in a matchup at San Francisco, where the weather should be decent on Monday night, he don't have to deal with the cold elements like he did last week of Soldier Field, even though he went out there and had a good ball game. I believe Bates, once again, 8-10 fantasy points minimum he could put up in this one. Because like I said, this Lion team, they just keep scoring week in and week out. Their offense is high-powered. And anytime you're on a high-powered offense, opportunities are going to be there weekly for a kicker. 6, Will Richard of the Minnesota Vikings. Richard, a great rookie season it's been for him. This week an indoor game back home versus the Green Bay Packers. And Richard, 50-plus yards, he's been automatic as well this season for this Minnesota Viking team. So this Viking team, a lot of trips in the red zone weekly. I know a lot of drives stall out as well, but Will Richard, they got the confidence in him. He's been putting the ball through the uprights all season long, even though he missed 4 weeks from week 10 to week 13. But this week versus Green Bay in a potential high-scoring game, I think Richard once again has a good outing. Number 7, Cameron Dicker of the Los Angeles Chargers. So Cameron Dicker, he's one of the more accurate kickers in the league this season. And 50-plus yards hasn't been a problem for him as well. So anytime you have a kicker who's on a high-powered offense or is pretty automatic from 50-plus yards, it's a good sign, obviously, for fantasy owners. So this week, I know it's going to be cold out there in New England, possibly snow, especially this late in the year in December. Kicker, this season's been very accurate. I know most of his games have been indoors, but I still believe he goes out there and this Charger team puts points on the board. 8, Jake Elliott of the Philadelphia Eagles. Elliott, a big game last week with 19 fantasy points, and he's starting to get his confidence back, is Elliott. I know he's missed a decent amount of field goals this season, but Philadelphia definitely has to count on him big in this game. If Jalen Hurts is out with the concussions, Elliott, he's been kicking the football better the last couple of weeks, 2 weeks in a row with double-digit fantasy points. And we know this Cowboy defense really isn't that good, where they give up a lot of points on the season, and field goal kickers have had good success. Number 9, Chase McLaughlin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So McLaughlin, it's been a solid season for him in a high-powered offense where Tampa Bay, they move the football a lot and get up and down the field pretty quick with the gun-swinging quarterback in Baker Mayfield. So this week in a matchup versus the Panthers, where they give up top 5 points to kickers all season long, and McLaughlin back home in a good kickers stadium, I think McLaughlin once again goes out there and has a good performance. Number 10, Jason Sanders of the Miami Dolphins. He had a big game last week, 19 fantasy points for Sanders. The only thing this Miami Dolphin team, for many seasons now, and especially traveling to cold places, they just don't travel well. So this week I think Sanders still is a top 10 option. I still think he'll have a serviceable ball game. He's been a way better kicker at home than he's been on the road. And this Dolphin offense as a whole has been way better at home than they've been on the road. And especially in these cold weather games, This offense really hasn't generated much over the last 2-3 years. Number 11, Justin Tucker of the Baltimore Ravens. So he's starting to get things going a little bit as Justin Tucker, but I still don't 100% trust Tucker. He's missed a lot of big field goals this season. 50-plus yards has been a problem for him, even going back over the last few seasons. I know this week it's indoors at Houston, which is a good place to kick, obviously not dealing with the weather elements or anything like that. But this Baltimore Raven team, another thing as well, they score a lot of touchdowns, and he's only getting extra points more weeks than not. So definitely fell off this year, especially that he was the best kicker for many seasons in fantasy football. And the 12th and final kicker I'm ranking is Tyler Bass of the Buffalo Bills. It's been a mixed bag of results this season for Tyler Bass. But anytime you're in a high-powered offense, opportunities are going to be there. And this week in a matchup versus the New York Jets, where they've played the Bills very tight over the last couple of seasons, I think there's going to be a few drives where the Jets keep them out of the end zone. I know it's a home game for Buffalo, where Bass, believe it or not, has been a better kicker in that bad weather element than he's been on the road throughout the majority of his career. So this week in a matchup versus the Jets, where they've had trouble stopping offenses, I think Bass will get a few opportunities. And it was good to see him last week in Buffalo kick a 50-plus yarder. So this week, I think 7-10 fantasy point range is a good possibility. So that's the top 12 kickers I'm ranking for Week 17 of the fantasy football season.